Global product sourcing makes custom apparel, drinkware, tote bags, and so much more merch to help you promote your brand. Seriously, I checked their website, and you can even get branded mosquito repellent for all of you mosquito paranoid Las Vegans. They're locally owned and operated and have created custom promotional items for Lee's Discount Liquors, Steiner's Pubs, and Aviators Baseball. They'll help you find the right product for your timeline and your budget. Go to thegpsinc.com. That's THEGPSINC.com, thegpsinc.com.
The saga, scratch that. The telenovela of the Oakland A's relocation to Las Vegas has taken its toll on even our most diehard baseball fans. Will they or won't they has been replaced by lots of what the hells and why us's. But one thing our city has never really done is take a good long look at the man behind the move, A's owner John Fisher. Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we're joined by Oakland-based sports writer Dan Moore, who's been doggedly covering the move since it was first announced. So, who is John Fisher, and what can Las Vegas expect as he moves his team to our city? It's Monday, July 8th. I'm David Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Dan, now that the A's have been in Oakland since 1968, we have a short podcast here, but can you quickly run us through their relationship with the city of Oakland pre-John Fisher?
Sure. So the A's have been an institution here in the East Bay, as you mentioned, since 1968. The institution was founded pretty immediately on great success on the field. The A's won 3 straight World Series in the early 70s with teams that were defined by some of baseball's most iconoclastic and memorable characters: Reggie Jackson, Catfish Hunter, Raleigh Fingers, you name it. These are people that became important to the story that baseball tells about itself. In the same way, they became integral to the story that Oakland and the East Bay told the world about itself. Oakland exists sort of perennially in the shadow of its neighbor to the west.
Sure. I think that's called San Francisco, if I believe correctly.
That's right.
Yeah.
And one way that it stepped out of that shadow for the last 50 some odd years was through its sports teams, including through the A's, who, in addition to those colorful characters, through their swagger and their character and their soul, seem to represent something distinct and irreplicable about the East Bay in comparison to San Francisco. So they became beloved and important here. You saw that manifest in the late 80s when another dynasty arose. The A's went to 3 World Series again. Important to call out that time because not only were they really successful on the field, but they also led the American League in attendance. They led the American League in payroll. They were as successful as a sports organization and a sports institution could be.
So let's move a little forward. Enter John Fisher. So tell us, who is he and what led to his purchase of the Oakland A's?
John Fisher is the heir to a retail fortune. His parents started Gap. And so the first thing to know about him is that he's very rich. The second thing that's important to know about him is he doesn't exactly seem to be a baseball fan. I'll get to that point in just a second. To answer your question, he purchases a stake in the A's in 2005. Normally, when people buy baseball teams, or any sports team for that matter, they do so with at least a nominal commitment towards doing right by the city they represent, putting onto the field a competitive sports product, investing, whether it's their own money or their own time and energy, into the experience of caring about that team, right? Into the fan experience, into the baseball experience. John Fisher did none of those things when he bought the A's in 2005. Instead,
Like none? He didn't do anything?
The only thing, his self-professed singular interest, was moving the A's out of Oakland. And so our relationship as fans, between fans and John Fisher, has been one of a rich outsider who he's from San Francisco, buying up this team and immediately trying to steal it out of the city. It felt like a ransacking from early on. And so that's been Oakland's relationship with John Fisher.
But that's been going on for like 2 decades. Has it been just this slow boil from suspicion to hate against this guy in the Bay Area? Is that your sense, generally speaking? Does anyone love this guy besides his parents?
Not in the East Bay.
Oh my gosh.
There was a brief period of time when John Fisher seemed to want to build in Oakland. And for about a year, he made overtures to the Oakland community. He made some improvements to the Oakland Coliseum. He marketed the team in Oakland, something he hadn't done. He made public commitments to his commitment to keeping the team in Oakland. And so there was a brief period of time when he seemed to reciprocate the love that fans had for his organization.
When was that?
That was around in 2019 when he was trying to secure public funds for a stadium here.
A new stadium, not a reno.
A new stadium, exactly.
Got it.
Important things for your listeners to remember, since you are inheriting this man.
Hashtag warning, Vegas. Okay.
You asked what happened between 2005 and 2019. He tries to move the team to Fremont. It's a local suburb out here. He tries to move the team to San Jose. He tries to move the team to other locations sort of in the East Bay that is not East Oakland. Every attempt is bungled really on account pretty specifically of his what feels, and I'm trying to be objective here, what feels like a short-sightedness or a clumsiness or a lack of attention to detail that kind of condemned each of those plans. And so
in baseball terms, are you going to list that as an error, like an unforced error?
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Okay.
A series of unforced errors that consumed the entirety of his attention as an owner to the express detriment of the team on the field. Our owner was interested in nothing other than moving the team, preferably somewhere where the public officials in the mayor's office would give him lots of public funding that he could put towards a new stadium. And that's actually where things fell apart in Oakland when the city council and the mayor did not consent to the entirety of John Fisher's terms as rapidly or as enthusiastically as he wanted. And to be clear, he was holding Oakland over a barrel at a time when it had just lost its other 2 beloved sports teams. So he's leveraging that political capital born of that new scarcity. He was asking for what was at the time one of the largest public handouts that would have been ever given in sports. This is close to $1 billion in subsidies and kickbacks, all for a privately owned stadium that he would have benefited from. So when Oakland doesn't consent to those terms, as rapidly as he likes,
or wholesale, because it sounds like they were in negotiations and he kind of drew a red line and that was the end of that.
There's a lot of suspicion here about whether he was ever actually interested in a real deal to begin with.
Want to know one of my favorite sounds? Here it is. That's the sound I hear when I'm learning Spanish with Babbel. And if you want to learn a new language this year, I guarantee it'll be one of your favorite sounds too. I'm David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, and I've been doing Babbel for a few weeks, and it's been so much fun. This week, I've been learning lots of food vocabulary and how to order in a restaurant. This is one of the things I love about Babbel, is that it's about learning the language so that you can use it. As Babbel says, it's designed by real people for real conversation. So it's all based on real life situations. And these restaurant lessons are awesome. When I went to Mexico City last year with my girlfriend, I was mute. But next time, I'm going to be ordering the sopes and las salsas picantes. Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold, plus all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. Here's a special limited-time deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, Get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
How did John Fisher systematically disinvest from the Oakland A's leading up to these negotiations that fell apart with the city of Oakland?
Well, to be clear, he never invested in the A's. He bought the team, but he kept the A's on field on one of the more parsimonious payrolls in all of sports, even though he is worth billions of dollars, by the way. So it wasn't as if he stopped investing in the team like he cut back his own generosity or anything like that. There was never really much investment.
Yeah. How about repairs of the stadium? Did he did a little, but then...
He did a little bit too. He created some new areas of the stadium, and he invested some resources in improving the Oakland Coliseum. Of course, the Oakland Coliseum was already at that time roundly considered by sports world and was often ranked as the worst stadium in American professional sports.
I did read something about possum nests being in the stadium themselves. Is that apocryphal, or did you see a possum when you were watching the A's play, Dan?
Do you mean that possums don't infest other stadiums? Is that not a normal thing that fans have to deal with?
I'd imagine not. I mean, certainly not in Las Vegas. Over at Allegiant Stadium, we haven't seen a possum yet. Not to say we might not see a mountain lion or a coyote soon, but,
To answer your question, it was not apocryphal. There wasn't a possum that infested the visitors' broadcasting booth. I do want to answer your question. What happens is there is a very painful shift in John Fisher's approach to Oakland and to working with Oakland. It goes from kind of the carrot, where he is trying to impress upon Oaklanders and our political representatives, look how beneficial I can be as a partner to the city. Look how committed I am to this. That lasts for like a split second. And then the COVID pandemic hits. There's some speculation that the cost of construction for the stadium that he wanted to build went up. As I mentioned, Oakland pushed back on some of his terms by insisting, for example, that there be more affordable housing included in the real estate component of the deal that he was offering. At that time, Fisher switches from a carrot to a stick. He takes the already anemic A's payroll and cuts it down to the lowest in baseball by an order of magnitude. He neglects the stadium. He stops marketing the team. He begins...
The possums are celebrating.
Good for
They're coming back home.
Good for the possums, bad for everybody else. And he enlists folks like Rob Manfred to start threatening fans here, to make not subtle suggestions about the viability of Oakland as a sports town, the worthiness of fans here and their ability to support Major League Baseball. It becomes like a hostage situation that gets increasingly toxic. And that, of course, is when Las Vegas comes in and John Fisher begins pitting the two cities against each other. Yeah. And we know how that turned out.
And you mentioned Rob Manfred. He's the commissioner of the MLB. I'm trying to get as much information as possible as they seem to be thrust upon us. I'm also wondering, isn't this kind of sort of baseball legacy, or even the A's legacy itself? I mean, they did start out in Philadelphia way back in 1905. They moved to Kansas City in 1955, Oakland 68. I mean, you did have them for 50 some odd years. Isn't that like the cycle? What makes this different?
Well, aside from a period in the mid-century when baseball and Major League sports generally were expanding westward, and there was a lot of relocation at that time. Aside from that, in the modern period, relocation is actually very rare. The A's are the only Major League franchise to relocate since the Expos relocated in 2005. It should not be accepted as business as usual, I think, and a few reasons come to mind. The fact that the A's have been here for so long made them ingrained in the fabric of this place, right? And entwine them in the fabric of this place. It only makes their abduction more painful.
Abduction.
And
I'm going to give you your words. Look, I'm not going to push you back, Dan, on your words. I mean,
I don't use that word lightly, and I'll tell you. And that's what it is, and that's what it feels like. It is someone buying the team specifically to take it away. That such moves are made possible in Major League Baseball does not make them any less painful.
Well, let me do this. Let me, and I feel horrible based on what I'm hearing from you, but I'm going to be Fisher's advocate for just a heartbeat. And I promise to go back to just regular CityCast. Sure. Fun guy.
Let's do it.
You know, he puts out some stats. The A's averaging a reported attendance of a little over 6,000 fans per game. That's less than half of the second worst team's attendance, the Miami Marlins, who average 14,000. The LA Dodgers, by comparison, the best in baseball, they average over 45,000 fans per game. The city didn't reach those terms. And, you know, a lot of analysts do say, although, you know, the math might be a little mucky, that Vegas is financially a better spot for a team. Doesn't it sometimes come down to those kind of considerations? Should we begrudge him a little bit of like business decision here?
So I'll take your points one by one. You mentioned the A's attendance this year, right, which is abysmally low. Why do you think attendance is so low this year in Oakland, right? The answer is that the guy's moving the team out of Oakland and has sabotaged the organization. The A's are on track for their third straight 100-loss season. That's not an accident. That's by design. The theory around these parts is that when Fisher wanted to grease the skids for relocation, he set about creating an economic and a political pretext for it. He wanted the A's straits at the Coliseum to seem so dire for those videos on social media to circulate of an empty Coliseum. He wanted that because that helped his case for, you know, people like, you know, as you just mentioned, like, look how bad it is in Oakland. He has to move. The response from fans the last few years of protesting with their wallets is an immune response to 2 decades of negligence at the hand of their owner. And in fact, I'll also point you to last summer's reverse boycott, which was a fan-led protest movement designed to refute precisely that point you just brought up, that it's the fans' fault, that it's the business environment's fault, as opposed to the business person. They sold out the Coliseum. How did that do?
They sold it out. I remember seeing pictures from that. A lot of people were wearing T-shirts that said the word "sell" on it. Was that directed to John Fisher, I'm guessing?
That's right. So you brought up the breakdown in negotiations between the city and John Fisher, and specifically how the city did not meet John Fisher's terms. Fisher was asking for about $850 million in public funds to cover offsite infrastructure costs for the stadium that he wanted to build here, along with other operational costs. Oakland cobbled together through tax infrastructure districts and grants about some estimates put it at close to $800 million worth of public funds to put towards the project. They were around, I might be rounding up there a little bit, they were around somewhere between $100 million and like $30 million short of what Fisher had asked of it on the public investment front. At the same time, as you probably know, homelessness, affordable housing, these are big problems here in the Bay Area. Part of Fisher's project that he wanted to build was not just a baseball stadium, but a huge neighborhood of sorts.
Like a village in support of the stadium, I guess.
And even beyond that, it included thousands of housing units. Oakland was asking, in an attempt to mitigate the ongoing affordability crisis, that a higher amount than what John Fisher wanted, I think they were asking around 20 to 30%, be affordable. Fisher wanted to stick to the California minimum. Those are just 2 small sticking points. But the idea that Oakland fell woefully short of meeting John Fisher's terms, or what John Fisher maybe needed to get to build the stadium here, is ludicrous. Oakland put forth more than double the amount of money than Las Vegas and Nevada eventually did to lure Fisher there. So the idea that a man who was worth $3.5 billion, according to Forbes, was not have been able to bridge a shortfall or made that work if he wanted to, that just doesn't check out. The last part that I'll address is the attractiveness of Las Vegas as a sports market in comparison to the East Bay.
Right. Now, here's where you need to be careful because most of our listeners are Las Vegas people. So go for it, Dan. I want you to go and be true, but I just want you,
all I was going to bring up is just statistically, Las Vegas deserves a Major League Baseball team. It, by all accounts, seems like a great baseball town. It's also a Major League sports town, as like the success of the Knights has made self-evidently clear, right?
Sure.
Compared to Oakland and compared to the East Bay, I mean, just so far as market size, the Bay Area, I think, is the 10th biggest media market in America. Las Vegas would be the lowest or the smallest in baseball. And it makes me think of this idea of, is it the market's fault that the A's as a business have floundered here in Oakland over the last couple of years? Or is it the business person's fault? Think about what John Fisher inherited. This is an institution and a brand that is beloved locally, recognized internationally, that's been here for 60 years, has built up goodwill in this region for all that time, and that exists in one of the biggest media markets in the country. In what other industry would we blame the market and the buyers for rejecting what this guy was selling, as opposed to the seller and the business person and what he did to that product?
And that's a good jump off point for Fisher. I mean, there's a lot of questions here in Las Vegas. He hasn't really opened himself up for much direct questioning. Assuming that we do get a shot at him to ask one short question, what should we ask him here?
That's a good question. I hesitate to answer because I would not ask him a question, and I would try to get it in writing that he will commit resources commensurate to the demands of fielding a consistently competitive baseball product and doing right by your fans in Las Vegas for as long as he owns the team.
Maybe get him to commit to funding an escrow account at the front end, put all the money in there in the beginning. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, that would be a good way to do it. The reason being is long before he abandoned Oakland in the way that he did, the reason that people didn't like him, the reason that the A's suffered under his stewardship was an underinvestment in the organization.
Yeah.
And
a commitment, right?
The experience of giving a damn about a team and the relationship between a team and a city, a franchise, and a fan base depends more than anything else on the inclinations and the temperament and the commitment of the guy who owns the team, of the person who owns the team. And so what you are inheriting with the A's is not just the brand, right? It's not just a baseball team, but it is more than anything else, this owner. And so your relationship with the team will only ever be as healthy and as worthwhile and fun and enjoyable as Fisher is committed to making it so. So I would get that commitment in writing as early as possible that he is going to give a damn.
Great point. If I saw him, I'd ask him, do you wear Gap clothes as the heir to the Gap fortune? And if his answer is no, that tells me a lot about the man. Hey, Dan Moore, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us here on CityCast Las Vegas.
Thanks, Dave.
And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, hey, go tell a friend. Rate our show too, just takes a second. Leave us a review, a few seconds more, and then subscribe to our morning newsletter. That's just the push of a button and an email. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky.